You can eat all of this and still be nutritionally deficient. Here's why and what to do about it. Not only am I going to bust a common myth today that almost everyone believes, I am probably going to blow your mind. Many people think that the healthiest food you can get is the stuff from the fresh produce section of the grocery store. And it's so nutritious you don't need any supplements. Supplements are just a scam. You can do just fine without them, especially if you're a raw vegan. Well, if you lived in the jungle and you plucked food right from the tree and you ate it right away, then yeah, that would be true. But that's not how most of us live. Some people have a garden, and that's great. They pick the food and they have it sitting on the kitchen shelf or for a few days in the fridge, thinking the whole time it's super nutritious because it came from the garden. When a fruit is attached to a tree or a vegetable is attached to roots in the ground, it's fully alive because it's constantly getting nutrients through the roots and the stems and the leaves. They're actually breathing and burning sugars and using oxygen and consuming antioxidants and repairing tissues just like our bodies are. But the moment you pick it, it's removed from its life support system. The umbilical cord is cut and it immediately starts dying. If you cut off a head of lettuce from its roots and you lay it on the table, you can literally watch it wither and go limp before your eyes within an hour. We think a peach or an orange is healthy because it's juicy. Well, ironically, that's the very thing that's killing it because moisture, water, is an oxidant. If you take a piece of metal and you put it in water, it will start to rust. But if you took that same piece of metal and place it out in the dry desert where it hardly ever rains, it would last a long, long time. That's why they store airplanes in the desert, because they can use them again years later if needed. In the 1960s, they found 2,000-year-old date palm seeds in a clay jar in the Judean desert, and they planted them in the ground, and they grew. There was still life in those seeds. But if you take a seed and you wet it, you're dissolving off the enzyme inhibitors that are protecting it, and it starts to sprout. And if you let it sit there all moist on your counter, it eventually starts to spoil and rot. Water, dihydrogen oxide, is an oxidant. It makes things rust. Rust is oxidation. Water is the universal solvent. It breaks things apart. Got hard, crusty stuff? Just leave it in water for a while. It'll start to dissolve, right? Water is the universal solvent. It helps break things apart. While a fruit or a leaf is on a tree, the sap and the moisture running through the veins keeps it alive and fresh. But the moment you pick that fruit, the lifeline is cut and the clock starts ticking because the water in that fruit or leaf now starts oxidizing. Antioxidants in that plant will try to prevent that from happening, and vitamin C is an antioxidant, which is why vitamin C is usually used up so quickly after a plant is picked. Studies have shown that within a few hours, sometimes up to half the vitamins and antioxidants are used up. That fruit is then put into baskets, which are then dumped onto a truck, which then drives to a processing plant where it's packed in boxes that goes to another truck that travels across the country to warehouses where grocery stores end up with it, where it then gets put on the shelves waiting for someone to buy it. That person then drives it home in their car and puts it on the kitchen shelf or the fridge for a few days or even up to a week. And by the time you eventually eat it, that thing has been oxidizing for a week or two. And a lot of times it's even shipped from Mexico or South America. Researchers found spinach lost up to 80% of its vitamin C within just 3 days. This study shows that lettuce vitamin C can be almost non-existent. Vitamin C is one of the most important vitamins, and it's one of the fastest nutrients to disappear. Once the fruit or vegetable is detached from the plant, it can no longer replace antioxidants like vitamin C, so degradation begins, and study after study shows nutrient losses hour by hour after harvesting. Now, not all food loses nutrition at the same rate. It depends on what it is. Carrots, blueberries, and apples last longer than leafy greens, broccoli, and peas. So the green stuff dies faster. Now, another thing to keep in mind is, which makes things even worse, is that most fruits and vegetables and produce isn't even picked ripe, meaning it didn't even have all its vitamins and nutrients anyway when it was picked. This is why it's so important to supplement with vitamin C. Now, I'm not saying grocery store produce is without merit, and yes, it's still one of the best food choices for people in the modern world, but just know it's lacking a lot of nutrients. So, where can you get these missing nutrients? Well, you probably heard that frozen food is more nutritious than fresh food. Yeah, that's true. I mean, fresh food is picked unripe. Frozen food, on the other hand, they wait for it to ripen, then they pick it and instantly freeze it, and you only lose maybe 10% of the nutrients in the freezing process. But this is where it gets interesting. If you were to wait for the plant to fully ripen, and then you pick that plant at its absolute prime and the vitamins and everything is just maxing out, and you immediately remove the moisture by freeze drying or dehydrating, you would be locking up the nutrients for years. And this is the part that blows people's minds. If you picked fruit right off the tree and you cut it up and immediately dried it or freeze dried it and then powdered it, it would be more nutritious than that piece of fruit that's lying on your kitchen that was picked in Mexico last week and has been oxidizing ever since. That's why most grocery store produce has very little flavor or taste. It was picked unripe a week or two ago, and it's been losing most of its nutrition since. And you know, if you've ever eaten a fresh juicy peach or a berry or an apple right off the tree, you'll know what I'm talking about. Lettuce from the grocery store tastes nothing like lettuce you just picked from the garden 5 minutes ago. Now, most people don't have gardens and they don't live in the jungle. Even native tribesmen dry plants and make powders out of them to use as food and medicine. I discovered this on my own years ago, the hard way. I was sick and dying for the first 30 years of my life. I thought I was eating healthy. Most people swear they eat healthy. They swear they are doing everything right. They eat raw vegan, they do yoga, they don't drink coffee or eat bread or ice cream, and they swear they don't do a lot of sugar or orange juice or mangoes. Yeah, right. Anyway, and they wonder why they have issues. Look, you don't live in the woods, all right? The stuff you're eating is depleted and you don't even know it. Don't you ever wonder why it tastes so bland? Food nowadays isn't even really food anymore. It's not like nature intended. Also, we haven't even mentioned the obvious yet. Fruits and vegetables are mainly water. If you took all the water out, there's very little left. You can do this. Take an apple, or even better, a whole head of lettuce, chop it up into bits, put it in a dehydrator, and when it's completely dried up, take the little shriveled bits out and grind them up in the coffee grinder into a powder and see what you have left. That apple becomes less than a teaspoon of powder, and the powder from that head of lettuce you could probably fit on the end of a finger. Do you know how many fruits and vegetables it would take to make 1 cup of powder, let alone 1 or 2 pounds? You're getting 100 times the concentrated vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and sterols and saponins and polyphenols and flavonoids and carotenoids and polysaccharides and fiber and phytoestrogens and isoflavones and amino acids and phenolic acids and fatty acids and complex carbohydrates and on and on and on. And it's preserved because it's dry. Sure, there are some volatile compounds that are lost when there's no more moisture, but the amount of concentrated nutrients that is left is mind-staggering. When you juice stuff, you're throwing away the fiber and exposing all those nutrients to water and oxygen, and within 15 to 30 minutes, you've lost a lot of those nutrients because of the oxidation. That's why juice from a few hours ago tastes terrible, and that's why the juice you buy in the store has so much sugar in it and to hide that nasty taste. Never buy pre-made juice from a store. It's just sugar water with spoiled oxidized plant matter in it. Now, I know we have no choice but to drive cars, live in houses, stare at computers all day, and eat unripe fruit and bland lettuce and boring food from the grocery store. But we need to fill in the missing gaps. We need to supplement with things we're not getting from our food. You can buy some frozen fruit, but you can't buy frozen leafy greens, and greens have phytonutrients that fruit doesn't have, and the greens in the produce section are what lose their nutrients the fastest. So, you really need help in the greens department, which is why the green formula is so important. Plus, grocery store greens are as basic as it gets. They have nowhere near the powerful medicinal compounds that wild plants have, like chlorella and bamboo and plantain and watercress and amlaberry and burdock root and prickly pear fruit and kudzu and dandelion leaf and moringa and ginseng and astragalus and purslane and licorice root and chickweed and gotu kola and hujang, AG1 and Organifi and kuchava don't have anything like that. And my herbs don't sit in a warehouse for years, and definitely don't drink any packaged liquid greens. It's probably worse for you than it is good. You need vitamin C, not the cheap kind you get in the store, because that's synthetic ascorbic acid made in a lab by combining cornstarch and sulfuric acid. You know that, right? You want the whole vitamin C complex that you get from fresh picked plants or freeze-dried high vitamin C plants like gubinge and sea buckthorn and rosehip and acerola. People ask about camu all the time because of all the MLM marketing hype. Camu is a good source of vitamin C if you eat it right off the tree. But once you pick it, camu especially oxidizes very fast, super fast. Fresh camu is very tart and sour because vitamin C is very tart and sour. But once it's picked, the vitamin C declines quickly because it's trying to, it's an antioxidant and tries to keep the plant from dying. And after a while, there's very little vitamin C left, and the naturally bitter polyphenols become much more noticeable. That's why camu tastes so bitter, because the vitamin C has left the building. That's why I don't have camu in my vitamin C formula. We need vitamin C, to make collagen, to heal wounds, to absorb iron and digest food and fight infections, you name it. And the body doesn't make vitamin C, and the best place to get it is from plants that have been picked at their peak and freeze-dried. That's why I make my own. This is the most powerful vitamin C you can get. It's nothing but dried plants. That's it. You need vitamin C for collagen. How's your skin and hair doing? I made this stuff for myself, and I was using it for years before people started asking for it. I turned 64 in a few weeks, and my powders are what I've been supplementing with my food for almost 20 years. If it didn't work, I wouldn't be wasting my time making it or taking it. Look at my hair. I'm in my mid-60s. I don't even have gray hair. I have to lighten my hair because I hate dark roots. And while other doctors are selling their supplements, they have to color and darken their gray hair. And they're younger than me. My testosterone is 600. That's pretty damn good for someone in their 60s. I don't need glasses anymore. I feel amazing. There is nothing wrong with taking supplements in this day and age, especially if they're made from nothing but dried plants, captured at their nutritional peak. And it's ironic, but some of this stuff is more nutritious than a lot of the stuff that you buy at the grocery store. Now, these powders are not a replacement for food, but they add missing vital nutrients, and you need both to be complete, because wild plants offer things that commercial and garden foods just can't. Commercial fruits and veggies nowadays seriously lack proper nutrients. They're picked unripe, and they're grown in soil that's been depleted over the last 100 years. There's no magnesium left in the soil nowadays. The Wild Force products are made from wild plants growing far from civilization, many of which grow roots hundreds of feet deep, pulling up massive amounts of deep minerals and vitamins and saponins and enzymes, and adding those to your already existing food will fill the gaps. Remember that guy in Norway who was wheelchair bound and started walking and walked 500 kilometers across Norway living off this stuff plus some cashews and coconut oil? For 15 years, you've been reading comments from women saying that the night formula helps stop their night sweats and hot flashes when nothing else worked before. Just read the comments from all these years. This stuff works. I'm not saying this to sell anything. I don't care if you buy it or not. I make the money investing. You should watch those videos, by the way. Everybody says, I don't have any money. Watch those videos. Anyway, this is mainly for me. If anyone else uses it, great, but this is mainly for me. You can ask the warehouse how many times a month I have them send me stuff because I'm running low because I use it so much. I want the best. You don't get the powerful benefits of chlorella and bamboo and burdock root and prickly pear and astragalus from grocery store kale or bananas. Look, do what you want. I'm just sharing what I do. I like the modern world. I love air conditioning and computers and cars, and I'm so glad I'm not alive 120 years ago when they didn't even have showers and toilets. If I have to take supplements, fine, no big deal. Just that's what I'm doing. It's just dried plants. Native tribesmen have been doing this forever, so there's nothing unnatural about adding dried powdered plants to your diet. Okay, Marcus has spoken. See you next week. No celery was harmed in the making of this video. La 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 la.